Welcome to another episode of Fill in the Blank. I'm here with Christopher Rourke.
Yo, yo.
Chris, what about the Sonderaktion 1005 do you know, also known as the Aktion 1005?
All I know is that it involved 2 Asian countries and torture. Right?
Nope.
Uh-oh.
What comes to your mind when I say the Sonderaktion 1005?
Dude, honestly, no idea.
Well, it's basically a special forces unit. So the Sonderaktion 1005 began in May 1942 during World War II to hide any evidence that people had been murdered by Nazi Germany.
Got the wrong articles. We're sitting here talking about multiple articles here.
And Aktion Reinhard in occupied Poland. The operation, which was conducted in strict secrecy from 1942 to 1944, used prisoners to exhume mass graves and burn the bodies. These work groups were officially called Leichen Commandos, or known as Corpse Units, and were all part of Sonderaktion Kommando 1005. Inmates were often put in chains in order to prevent escape. In May 1943, the operation moved into occupied territories in Eastern and Central Europe to destroy evidence of the final solution. Sonderaktion 1005 was used to conceal the evidence of massacres committed by the SS Einsatzgruppen Nazi death squads that had massacred millions of people, including 1.3 million Jews, according to historian Raul Hilberg, as well as Roma and local civilians. The Aktion was overseen by selected squads from the Skanderweist and the Orszkan Polsy. So already they're using prisoners in chains to burn bodies or dig up bodies and burn them. How would you feel? Some guy just pulled you out of a prison to dig up some bodies and...
Is it shortening my sentence? Because, I mean, honestly, depending on which prison I'm in, you want to get out.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it, but if it's like max security fucking torture every day...
Maybe you get a burger at lunch. Instead of getting the gruel, you just get a burger.
I don't even... Well, depending on how hungry I was. I think it's all depending on the circumstances. I don't know if I'd like digging up bodies very much.
What would you do for a Klondike bar?
Dig up bodies!
So anyone who knew of the horrible crimes kept the information in fear of being executed as a potential leak.
See?
You knew what was going on, you just kept your mouth shut and walked away. Well, let's talk about some operations. In March 1942, SS Operngruppen I probably said that wrong, but it's probably Obergruppen Führer? What's the thing with the Führer?
Führer?
I hate German words.
Wait, let me see.
It's F-U-H-R-E-R.
Yeah, Führer.
The Führer.
Mein Führer.
Mein Führer, that's what I thought. The Obergruppen Führer. Reinhard Heinrich placed SS... God, it's another one. Paul Blobel in charge of the Aktion 1005, though its start was delayed after Heydrich was assassinated in 1942. It was after the end of June that the SS Gruppenführer, Heinrich Müller, head of the Gestapo, finally gave Blobel his orders. With the principal aim was to erase evidence of Jewish exterminations, the Aktion would also include non-Jewish victims of Nazi Einsatzgruppen. So Assassination Operation Anthropod was linked to this. Operation Anthropod was when they were trying to assassinate a special Nazi person, and they ended up messing up and killing a bunch of civilians. A lot. Basically blew up the wrong car.
Good stuff.
So Blobel began his working experiment at Kelmco, also known as Kulmhof. Attempts to use incendiary bombs to destroy exhumed bodies were unsuccessful as the weapons set fire to nearby forests. The most effective way was eventually found to be giant pyres on iron grills. The method involved building alternating layers of corpses and firewood on railway tracks. After the pyre burned down, remaining bone fragments could be crushed by pounding with a heavy dowels or in a grinding machine and then reburied in pits. The operation officially began at Sobieber Extermination Camp. The Heinrich Commandos exhumed the bodies from mass graves around the camp and then burned them, after which the task workers were executed. The process then moved to Belzec in November 1942. So after these people that would dig up these bodies and burn them on tracks on these giant pyres that were set up, they were killed.
The people that were burying the bodies. See?
Yeah.
Don't take the free burger at lunch, dude.
It's like you're digging your own grave.
Mm-hmm.
Look, man, if they put bacon on that burger, you gotta...
It's a compelling argument.
You just gotta do it. The process then moved to Belize in November 1942. The Auschwitz and Mandrake camps had crematoria with furnace rooms on site to dispose of the bodies. Therefore, the Aktion 1005 commandos were not needed there. Surplus corpses were burned by their own prisoners. The semi-industrial incineration of corpses at the Treblinka extermination camp began as the political danger associated with the earlier burial list was realized. In 1943, the 22,000 Polish victims of the Soviet Katyn massacre were discovered near Sonderaktion, Russia, and reported to Adolf Hitler. Their remains were well preserved and underground, attesting to the Soviet mass murder. By April 1943, the Nazi propaganda began to draw attention of the international community to this war crime. The Katyn Commission was forced to make detailed examinations in an effort to drive a wedge between the Allies. So they were trying to show evidence that Russia had committed this giant massacre that killed 22,000 Jews.
Ah.
So it was basically Hitler's way of trying to drive a wedge between allies. So meanwhile, the secret orders to exhume mass graves and burn the hundreds of thousands of victims instead came directly from the Nazi leadership in April. The corpses that had been buried at Treblinka with the use of a crawler excavator were dug up and cremated on the orders of Heinrich Himmler himself, who visited the camp in March 1943. The instructions were to utilize rails as grates came from the sulfur or Herbert Floss, the camp's cremation expert. The bodies were placed on cremation pyres that were up to 30 meters, also 98 feet long, with rails laid across the pits on concrete blocks. They were splashed with petrol over wood and burned in one massive blaze, attended by roughly 300 prisoners who operated the pyres. In Belzec, the round-the-clock operation lasted until March 1943 in Treblinka and went on at full speed until the end of July. So think, all these prisoners are constantly throwing these bodies on this thing, trying to get rid of 22,000 bodies.
Mm-hmm.
How long?
It's going to take a while, dude. People
it said
are
it took a couple months, but it said from March to July.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. I mean, at least it was warm out.
January,
right?
February, March, April, May, June, July. So it took like six months or 4 months.
That's ridiculous.
The operation also returned to the scenes of earlier mass killings such as the Baby Yar, Bonary, and the Ninth Fort, as well as Brona Gora. By 1944, with Soviet armies advancing, SS Obergruppenführer Wilhelm... Dude, I'm going to say it.
It's just such a funny word.
Obergruppenführer. Is that how you say it?
Obergruppenführer?
Obergruppenführer. It's like a restaurant. Come on down to the Obergruppenführer. Wilhelm Kopp, head of the Regeros Wartheland, ordered that each of the 5 districts of general government territory set up its own Aktion 1005 commando to begin cleaning mass graves. The operations were not entirely successful as advancing Soviet troops reached some of the sites before they could be cleared. The aftermath. At the Nuremberg trials after World War II, a deputy of Adolf Eichmann, that's that word again, gave the following testimony regarding Aktion 1005. In November 1942, in Eichmann's office in Berlin, I met Standardfrutenherr Blobel, who was the leader of Commando 1005, which was specially assigned to remove all traces of the final solution of the Jewish problem by Eichmann's groups and all other executions. Commando 1005 operated from at least autumn 1942 to September 1944, and this period subordinated to Eichmann. The mission was constituted after it first became apparent that Germany would not be able to hold all territory occupied in the east, and it was considered necessary to remove all traces of criminal executions that had been committed. While in Berlin in November 1942, Ploppel gave a lecture before Eichmann's staff specialists on the Jewish question from the occupied territories. He spoke of the special incinerators he had personally constructed for use in the work of Commando 1005. It was their particular assignment to open the graves and remove and cremate the bodies of persons who had been previously executed. Commando 1005 operated in Russia, Poland, and through Baltic area. I again saw Plopel in Hungary in 1944, and he stated to Eichmann in my presence that the mission of Commando 1005 had been completed. So if you're a part of Commando 1005, your job is to dig up bodies and burn them and get rid of the evidence. So it was the idea that you weren't going to be able to hold the territory for long. It wasn't going to be under German control for long. So get rid of any evidence that we did anything like this, so we don't have anything to be used against us in any type of trial form. So they already knew they were going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
So Blobel was sentenced to death by the U.S. Nuremberg Military Tribunal in the Eitzgruben trial. He was hanged for Landsberg prison on June 8, 1951. Nearly 60,000 deaths are attributed to Blobel during testimony at Nuremberg. He allegedly only killed between 10,000 and 15,000 people. The prosecution at the trial of Adolf Eichmann in 1961 attempted to prove that Eichmann was Blopel's superior, but the court did not accept it. Blopel's supervisor was in fact Heinrich Müller. So some dramatizations. Aktion 1005 was actually depicted in the 1988 TV miniseries War and Remembrance. It plays a central role in Daniel Silva's 2005 novel A Death in Vienna. Schindler's List also depicts Aktion 1005 when Jewish prisoners were forced to exhume corpses for burning on open pyres. And Leon Weichselwels wrote the book Death Brigade, where he describes his work as part of Sonderaktion 1005 of burning more than 310,000 bodies close to Genova witness concentration camps. How many bodies does it take for you to burn till you start seeing these people's faces everywhere you go?
That's probably the reason why they had the prisoners do it, because I mean, you wouldn't want to put your soldiers into a thing like that, you know. It's pretty fucking ridiculous, though.
Well, once I kind of wrote down my own little facts and did my own little research, once the Allies knew the knowledge of the attack, it needed to be ended. So once they found out about this, they knew that someone had to be accountable. You can't be burning people's corpses. Major health risks of mass burnings of corpses created two problems that were a major detriment, which consisted of the millions of flies that were brought to the toxic infectious smell, then contaminating the groundwater and hurting the people of the area.
By burning?
Yeah. I mean, you're burning bodies. You gotta think.
Mm-hmm.
That smell, and that's like disease, everything. You're getting stuff contaminated. There's people washing their hands in the lake and stuff.
Yeah, but it's not going into the water. It's going into the air.
Yeah, but if you're dealing with people's dead corpses,
yeah, I mean,
and then you're looking for a place to get some blood off your hands, what do?
Yeah, that's true.
There's a river nearby. The fear that later generations would not understand their plan was their whole idea of trying to get rid of any evidence that any of this stuff happened, because their whole Nazi eugenics program, their whole thing was that they were trying to create basically Hitler's ideas of a perfect specimen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't fit their description of what a perfect specimen was, you got killed. So they had a feeling that people like now who live in Germany or Germans now wouldn't understand what they were trying to accomplish.
I'm sure they don't.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they don't either. But that was the whole idea of them getting rid of their evidence. They were like, okay, we need to get rid of that we even tried any of this, because future generations are not going to understand us. So coming down to the Sonderaktion 1005, I mean, what is it? What is, like, how far does someone have to go to get rid of evidence when it comes to burning somebody's bodies, and you just don't even care anymore? You're just so robotically tuned into it.
Well, like you said, it was prisoners mainly doing it.
There was a special group that was doing it, and then they would get prisoners to do it also.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that special group was just, like, dehumanized. Like, they don't have a consciousness anymore. Like,
maybe they're doing remember what we say, we do anything to kind of, when your life's at stake? I mean, when you're a prisoner, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, when you're a prisoner, hell no. I'm saying, like, the unit that was doing it, they probably just became dehumanized, like...
Maybe the unit was probably thinking, like, I don't want my kids to find out what I've done, so, like, they're trying to burn the thing.
That might be it, too. Never know.
So what do you think about the Sonderaktion 1005?
I mean, it's pretty fucked. I mean, I could see the logic behind it, kind of, but their reasoning for it is not really, like if they're like, oh, well, I don't want the next generation, whatever, blah, 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 then win the war. You know, no matter what you do now, the winners write the history books. If one body's found, they can claim any number.
Yeah, but they were already on the losing end. This was like the last
Yeah,
resort
see-
to get rid of any evidence possible. Like burning the books of Alexandria, like the giant Alexander fire.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to think that, when they found documents of Operation Cherry Night Blossom or something like that,
Mhm.
the whole idea that Japan was going to attack us like a month after they surrendered at they had a plan to attack us, like bomb us right before we dropped all the bombs on them and everything. Like they were going to drop 150 million in contaminated ticks and like fleas and stuff in California.
Really?
Yeah, me and
Yeah,
Evan
see,
talked
that's pretty
about
fun.
this. We did a fill in the blank on it,
Hmm.
but like nobody knew about this plan, and they tried to get rid of the plan by shoving it down a toilet, and that's
Oh,
where
yeah,
people
yeah.
found it. Like to think that that's happened. Like how many times have someone's been trying to get rid of their plans because they didn't want to find out? Like we need to burn all the evidence. We need to burn anything. Like they're coming to get us. Like we've been found out. We
Mhm.
need to get rid of all the evidence. Anything that's going to incriminate us.
Yeah.
Hell, that's what that show Gotham has on it, where they're working at the mental facility and they're doing all those subject testing experiments. Like get rid of all the stuff, burn it,
Mhm.
hide it all.
Yeah, a lot of government institutions have gotten really smart about that, though. Like they've been getting better, even though we're in like the digital age. It's just like fuck it, kill the hard drives. It's just like
Shut it down.
that's
Shut it
like,
all down.
Yeah, that's what government's become very good
Unplug the computer from the wall. That'll do it.
at. Mm-hmm.
That's what I do to kind of fix my laptop. You just unplug it from the wall.
Even like mercenaries, though, like modern day mercenaries who were over in Iraq and the Gulf during those wars, like they have direct orders, or that they've seen direct orders where the mortar teams are supposed to shoot around the convoys of the Taliban and ISIS, but they can't say anything in fear of dying. And where do those orders go? They don't just disappear.
I guess it's much easier now to erase data that's real and like something you type in, but what erases the data from your mind? How long until we separate the synapses of memory so you literally don't remember? Or you can brainwash yourself to forget that it happened, like hypnosis type way.
I'm gonna have to find out the name of the movie, but there's a movie like that where like anything bad happens in your life, you can pay someone to.
Imagine you do a
wipe
horrible
that.
experiment, and then someone just gives you a little bit. I want to be hypnotized, so I don't remember that experiment. I mean, they worked with psychic driving and those types of things. That who's that one guy that was did those experiments on that?
Driving.
He created the theory of psychic driving.
Hmm.
Which you know what psychic driving is?
No.
It's basically like if you play a certain amount of beats or something into someone's head. He did the experiments on people that had schizophrenia. Remember I told you about that where they drugged them and threw them in a coffin and stuff and then put snakes over top of that kid's body and stuff?
Yeah, that's
While
pretty
he was
fucked.
alive, he couldn't move, but he just felt all the snakes. It was desensitizing them. They're doing all these different types of tests where you do you put headphones on at night, have a repeating message going through your mind while you sleep. You're gonna wake up, and then it was a form of mind control. They had different types of clicks or different types of snaps they could do, and you'd follow the orders or
That's a veil in itself if you can lift that.
totally
before you
forget
notice.
things. Like that's a type of mind control or erasing. Like they would erase people's memory. Remember I told you about the people that the families that were suing because their family members that were in these experiments had to relearn how to walk because when they would do the memory erase thing, it completely erased their functioning of like way before back then. Like way before like learning how to walk.
Yeah, that's pretty
and stuff.
crazy.
It's hard to think how far the mind can go, but how far until we can use that to our advantage, where we're able to erase, like make you do something and then erase it from your mind so you didn't be like, I didn't do that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's gonna be a day.
Who would do this type of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, what? Like you did it. We have proof. We have video of you doing it. That's not me. I don't remember doing that.
Mm-hmm.
10-second Tom. That can be real. Hi, I'm Tom. I know. We just met 5 minutes ago. Tom was in a terrible brain accident. Or a terrible car accident, and now he can only remember 10 seconds. Oh my god, am I alright? Hi, I'm Tom.
Good God.
Well, anybody that wants to look up this extermination group of the Nazi regime, I suggest you look into it. Maybe look up the word Führer. Mein Führer. That's easier to say than Heinz Gruppenführer. Oh my
Heinz
God, I got it
Gruppenführer.
right at the end.
Heinz Gruppenführer.
Heinz Gruppenführer. Well, anybody that wants to Heinz Gruppenführer this podcast, check it out. And if you want to look up this thing for yourself and tired of hearing me baffle about it, because I'm definitely tired of pronouncing words that are from not American.
I only speak American here.
I only speak taco and burgers. Stay tuned for the next episode of this podcast.